So we absolutely have to talk about Tesla stock because it just had a massive short squeeze take place, breaking through the peaks that we had in July. And the short sellers, my goodness, the short sellers ended up getting beaten like a stray dog. And of course, no one wants to end up looking like Brian Griffin from Family Guy after Stewie comes through.
Yeah, that's what happens, man. Oh my God!
Now, we have to talk about what ended up taking place and of course talk about what's going on with Tesla stock. Now, this massive short squeeze took place just after the election. Once Trump came into office, as we all saw, Trump had a massive win. But of course, we have to talk about what's leading to this optimism around Tesla stock. Now, within the Push and Profit private group, we also identified other plays that we talked about, but for the purposes of this video, we're just gonna limit it to what's going on with Tesla. Now, recently, on the third quarter earnings call, Musk said that he would use his sway with the Trump administration to establish a federal approval process for autonomous vehicles, which is of course a huge W for Tesla, as this would streamline the direction for Tesla to head into fully autonomous vehicles. Now, if you're wondering why, I have a few bullet points that I want to go ahead and highlight. Number one being faster deployment of technology, because we would have this nationwide rollout which would accelerate the revenue that we could see from the robo-taxi fleet. But of course, there's also that cost efficiency, as this would cut legal and administrative costs. And then of course there's market scalability, which would unlock a broader US market for the robo-taxi fleet. And of course this would also help with FSD growing with its miles on the road. But on top of that, this would also just improve consumer confidence, as a uniform safety standard would kind of establish some trust. But of course, with all that said, we kind of have to talk about the elephant in the room, and that is my stance on Tesla. For example, Tesla does have exposure in my long-term portfolio, but back before the earnings, I mentioned that although I do have shares of Tesla I've been holding for a few years, I don't plan on adding into my position, as I expected the earnings to actually turn out bad, and then earnings ended up actually coming out pretty decent. But I still mentioned that I wasn't gonna add into my long-term portfolio, as I expected the price to start to settle down a bit. And indeed, we did see the price start to kind of capitulate after this recent spike from the earnings. But then of course the election took place with Trump winning, and that just spiked Tesla stock upwards. Now in reality, I didn't really miss out on anything, because again, I do still hold those shares on Tesla. I'm not selling Tesla, I'm not shorting Tesla, I still have exposure, but I just didn't buy more into Tesla before this recent rally. And I did buy into Palantir, which also had a similar rally. So in reality, I'm not really missing out into the price action. But I want to go ahead and kind of just talk about a couple of things in regards to Tesla. For example, Bank of America recently increased their price target for Tesla, and they mentioned that with Trump in office, he would ease environmental regulations that would reduce the urgency for incumbent automakers to transition from internal combustion engines to EVs, and how this is a scenario that would enable Tesla to strengthen its dominance in the EV market, especially because we're likely to have a lot of those legacy automakers start to push back their plan. For example, under the Biden administration, we had this rule that, cars would need to be electric by 2032. But with Trump in office, he may go ahead and ease on those standards and kind of push it back further. And what's likely to take place is that a lot of these legacy automakers, because they're still unprofitable under EV vehicles, they're likely to go ahead and kind of delay what they're going to do in terms of production for these EV vehicles. In fact, we're already starting to see this. For example, recently Bentley, who is owned by Volkswagen, said that their entire car lineup will go fully electric in 2035 instead of 2030. So we're seeing plans kind of get pushed back for a lot of these legacy vehicles, because of course under the Biden administration there was kind of this whip to get all these legacy automakers into electric vehicles being produced. But now with the likelihood of this being eased by the Trump administration, these legacy automakers are going to put themselves at a further disadvantage, because they want to focus on the profits, which is their internal combustion engines. And so they're going to likely kind of sit out on building more of the infrastructure for EV vehicles, which is of course a major plus for Tesla, who's going to go ahead and gain its competitive edge and market share grow once again in terms of people buying electric vehicles. So this is definitely great news. But on top of that, what's also pretty interesting is we didn't quite understand how involved Elon would be within the Trump administration, but we recently kind of got something that indicates that there's likely to be a huge involvement within the Trump administration, and that's because just recently Elon Musk joined Trump to have a conversation with Zelensky. So on top of Elon Musk mentioning that he wants to have this Department of Government Efficiency and he's going to sit on this board or cabinet for that, we're still seeing Trump actually be more involved with things like foreign policy. And so, or did I say that right? Elon being more involved with foreign policy. And so this is pretty interesting because we're seeing Elon much more involved than what everyone originally thought. And this is, again, a huge plus for Tesla. But let's go ahead and kind of talk about the technical aspects and of course the fundamental aspects about Tesla. Now before we do so, just a friendly reminder that if you have not done so already, make sure to hit that subscribe button so that you don't miss out on future videos. And before we do so, also make sure to leave a comment in the comment section below and hit that like button because it does help with the engagement of these videos. And let's go ahead and talk about Tesla from a technical perspective and also tie in a bit of the fundamentals now that we are post-election, right? Or now that we're in this post-election environment. Alrighty, so we are officially in my laptop taking a look at Tesla, and as promised, we're gonna go ahead and touch on things from a technical perspective and just lightly on a fundamental perspective. Right now, of course, I mentioned earlier in this video, as I mentioned in previous videos, that while Tesla was here before earnings, I said I wasn't going to add more as my portfolio had a large exposure to Tesla and I had this doubt that there were going to be earnings. And guess what? I was wrong. Tesla actually did beat earnings, but I said the earnings still don't look that great for me. I'm going to go ahead and wait for things to kind of settle down. And guess what? We ended up seeing Tesla kind of fall down, as I mentioned earlier in this video, and we bounced above this descending trend line that Tesla's had for the last pretty much 3 years. So pretty interesting. Tesla stock actually held up around this area of $240. And of course, that's when we had the election and that's when Tesla pushed up. Now, here we are today. And what are my thoughts for Tesla? Am I going to be adding in here now? And what are my thoughts right now? Of course, as I always say, you should only trade or invest in whatever you see value and fits your personal needs. For example, I believe that Tesla was overvalued over here from its intrinsic value from a fundamental perspective. And although price still ran up, there's many occasions where stocks can trade much higher than what their intrinsic value is. And I still believe that Tesla still is overvalued. And so I think, obviously I'm going to move my price target for Tesla in the long term, but I think they're still trading at these rich levels over here, and I want to go ahead and talk about it right now. Fundamentally, still nothing has changed for Tesla. However, we have a Trump administration, and although the policies are still not certain, right, we don't really have Trump into office until like January 21st, I believe, but right now, we just have rumors of policies, and a lot of those policies do seem like they would be beneficial for a company like Tesla. And so that would obviously change the fundamentals, but as of now, the fundamentals have not changed. We're just seeing a lot of optimism of people trading and buying into Tesla because of the fundamentals changing due to a new administration. But again, I still have some doubts in some areas, especially if tax credits do get removed. I actually believe that we may not even have that removed, but we'll go ahead and have to wait until policies get updated within the Trump administration. But looking at things from a technical perspective, let's go ahead and kind of just talk about it, right? When we're looking at the exponential moving average averages, we're actually trading much higher than the 50-day moving average. So there's this big spread, this big delta from where the average is to where we are. And if we take a look at the RSI, the relative strength index, we see that we're trading at 76.76, which is typically anything above 70 on the RSI is considered something that's overbought. And we kind of see that trend happen back in July where, things were overbought and we ended up seeing some selling pressure take place. And now just recently we hit those overbought areas. Right now, again, as I always say, regardless of fundamental analysis, technical analysis, whatever analysis you use, What really matters is the price action of the company, because stocks can trade regardless what the fundamentals look like. We've seen several instances of that, or we could see technical saying one thing and then stocks kind of doing something else, because stocks don't have to adhere to any squiggly line you draw on the chart. And that's something I try to preach here on the channel and also within the Push and Profit private group. But what is it that I'm looking for? And again, you guys are free to comment down below what you guys are doing with Tesla. But again, it's not like I missed out because I still have those shares in Tesla. Did I miss out by adding in more? Yeah, of course. But in reality, as I mentioned, I added more into NVIDIA, which pushed up, but also Palantir, which also had a major run. So in terms of percentage gains, the portfolio is still looking pretty juicy on my end. But of course, I'm sure someone's going to say, oh, but you missed out on Tesla. I got some other nice plays elsewhere. But what am I doing with Tesla? And again, this is just what I'm doing. Again, I do believe that this is, from a fundamental perspective, still a bit rich. The forward PE ratio is historically high for Tesla. And also, when we're looking at things from a technical perspective, we're in an overbought region. Does that mean that Tesla can't go higher? No, absolutely not. It can, right? Because the market can continue doing whatever it's going on, and there's that momentum taking place. But just also remember that we're in an area with little volume relative to price, and so the order books are thin. And so if selling pressure comes in now, that could quickly spike down just as fast as it spiked up, just because when there's a lot of volume relative to price, there's just exchanging between the buyers and sellers. We have a thin order book, so selling would push things downwards. And so what is it that I'm looking for? Well, let's take that off because I like to keep things clean. I don't like to have all the squiggly indicators on the chart, right? I think it's sometimes just crazy to have that. So we're currently at around this area, 321. I'm going to go ahead and look into see if the momentum is going to continue, or if this is just simply liquidity for large funds to kind of exit and take profit. And the next area I'm going to be looking for is honestly going to be around over here, the $300 area, as that was the previous high back in July. And if we do bounce from that area and show confirmation of an uptrend, yeah, I'll go ahead and add into my long-term portfolio. Did I buy in at the absolute bottom? No, but I'm still adding into the portfolio. Again, it's not about buying exactly at the best points in the market. You're not going to successfully do that consistently over time, right? So that's an area that I'm going to be looking for if there's any weakness. Now, if we do break below the 300 area, well, I'm going to quickly try to see if Tesla is going to now hold up above this 240 area where we bounced from last time. And again, this is just what I'm looking at with Tesla from a technical perspective. And as far as my fundamental analysis on Tesla, I'm gonna have to change some of the assumptions, especially with FSD, right? Because I've been very kind of not as optimistic as many have been in terms of FSD for the future. But now with this idea that there may be this regulation that's going to be kind of stripped away, not stripped away, that's probably the worst word or example to say. I would say kind of like just deregulation taking place, right? Kind of the removal of this heavy restriction. That could be a benefit for Tesla to get more FSD miles on the road, especially with robotaxi being able to operate in multiple states. For example, in the last earnings call, Elon said by next year we'll have robotaxi in some regions in Texas, etc. But we could possibly have robotaxis in all the regions of the country, and that could significantly help Tesla double up on the data that it needs to collect to make FSD a full reality. And so that's something that now I may have to actually update on my financial model. So just my thoughts on Tesla. You guys let me know in the comment section down below. Hopefully you guys watch this video in its entirety. Just wanted to provide a quick update. And before you guys go, again, make sure to subscribe. Check out the links in the description below. And check out this next video right over here. Take care, guys.